Ike's No Good, Very Bad, Terrible Boss. Written by Barracuddle and read by Michelle of UAs-Art. Part 1. Ike's boss is probably not human. Ike had a few theories about his boss. 1. Craig Tucker was actually an alien who snatched a poor, unsuspecting body and became the manager of their paper company. 2. Craig Tucker is a robot that the company created so they could secretly spy on their employees. 3. Craig Tucker is the human equivalent of an ass. Ike was leaning towards theory 2, looking at the main office's window. Tucker sat there, back rigid against the chair, fingers clacking away in a way that couldn't be natural. His office was pristine in a way that he held no personal trinkets in it. About the only thing the boss had of personal value on his desk was the black thermos he carried every day. Ike looked back down at his own computer, frowning. It was a job his brother Kyle urged him to take. Ike had just finished college and couldn't find work anywhere. Kyle had explained his friend needed a new salesperson, and that's where the whole theory fell apart. Tucker couldn't be a robot because robots didn't have any friends, and he couldn't be a body snatcher because he'd be too busy feasting on brains to make friends. Or, at least, that's what Ike thinks body snatchers do in their free time. So, Craig Tucker was just a grade A asshole, it seemed. Ike read through the list of potential clients in the email Tucker had sent him 20 minutes ago. He probably expected it to be divided up between all the salespeople. Ike grumbled to himself. This meant speaking with his co-workers. Ike noticed a ring when Tucker had flipped him off the first time. Aside from being the most unprofessional thing Ike had ever seen him do, it brewed a whole new mystery in Ike's big brain. Just who would marry this man? He was grumpy and rude, and didn't give a shit about a person's feelings. Ike was there during the yearly employee reviews. 2 of his co-workers fled his office, crying. But the silver band continued to glint. Ike couldn't even think of what a masochist the person would be to marry Tucker. What if it was an arranged marriage? Do they still do those? Are they even happy? Ike had been working for over 2 months when an irregularity showed up. The irregularity being a twitchy, spastic blonde. His hair was pulled back from the front by a clip, and he carried 2 cups of coffee and a bag from Harbuck's Coffee. It was obvious the man worked there, the red, coffee-stained apron flapping around him as he fidgeted by reception. Ike watched him, interest piqued. He'd never seen the blonde before, and he looked vaguely mad, with all the twitching and mutterings to himself. And then the blonde swiveled his eyes towards Ike, bright green eyes wide and surprised. "What are you staring at, Ick?" The man all but shouted across the small office. Ike looked down quickly, busying himself with his computer before calling one of his clients. He was not about to irritate the obviously unhinged person in the office. The receptionist probably already called up security anyways. Except it was Tucker who entered the office, looking frazzled, which was odd. Ike watched his manager walk towards the blonde. "Tweak, what—" "Office, please!" The green-eyed boy, Tweak, interrupted abruptly, foot tapping impatiently on the floor. Tucker nodded quickly, ushering in the man to his office. The door shut, and with a shock of surprise, Ike saw Tucker twist the blinds, and they came down, blinding Ike from the room inside. Ike processed the information slowly. A random man had shown up in the office. No one except for Ike even batted an eye at the stranger. He had interrupted Tucker, and Tucker did not scream at him at all. He didn't even glare at Tweak. Ike swiveled his head down, frowning. Just who was that man? 2 weeks later, another incident occurred. Tucker usually promptly arrives at 9:30 a.m. every day, 30 minutes before everyone else. Today, he arrived at 9:45 a.m. Ike also noticed the tinfoil hat he wore upon his head. It looked like it had been made haphazardly. Boss? one of his co-workers chimed. It was a pudgy older man with a pendant for starting drama and making fun of his co-workers. Ike saw his flushed red face and knew he was holding back from spewing laughter. "What, Cartman?" Tucker spit out, glaring. "Yeah, I got something on the top of your head there." Cartman explained. "Yes, and?" Nothing. Cartman muttered, eyes wide and unassuming. With one last glare, Tucker turned and shut the door to his office. Cartman began to wheeze immediately, sputtering as if he had just heard the biggest joke ever. The rest of the office collectively ignored him, Ike included. The Canadian turned and glimpsed Tucker's office. The man inside was looking down at his hands, fiddling with the tinfoil hat, and for a moment Ike thought the man was smiling. But then he placed the hat back on his head and began his work. How odd. The man came back 3 weeks later, and this time Tucker was already in his office. So the blonde quickly entered the room, shutting the door. This time, the blinds stayed open. "What a bunch of fat," Cartman muttered as he moved past Ike's desk. Ike tensed. This wasn't the first time Cartman had said shit about their boss. It was a wonder how he was still here. The only thing keeping him from getting fired was his stellar salesman record. He was the best. Ike knew that. But still, he was a major asshole. It was weird. Kyle knew Cartman from college. He was his shitty roommate a year before he moved in with Craig. Kyle ranted to Ike almost every week how Cartman was a lazy fat ass with a terrible personality. How he got this job, Ike really doesn't know, nor does he care. All he knew was that Cartman was an awful person when he wanted to be, and that was often. I bet they're talking about their fucking perfect-ass life together. Cartman rolled his eyes. Ike turned to him, surprised. It seemed like Cartman wanted to speak to him. "You know that dude?" Ike asked, half curious. Cartman seemed giddy at the question. "Yeah, I know him. He's a complete fucking spaz. I don't even know how Craig sees anything in that twitchy fucker. He must give good head or something." Cartman explained. Ike realized just exactly why Cartman was happy at that moment. An opportunity to talk shit, most likely. But also, this was the kind of information Ike wanted to know. "They're married?" "Yeah, I got hitched right after college. Stupid ass mistake, if you ask me. Who the fuck gets married that early? They're fucking idiots." Cartman gossiped. Ike looked back to Tucker's office. They were both talking. Tweak had his hands wrapped around his coffee, looking the calmest Ike had ever seen him. Tucker was busy eating a muffin. "Did you know them in college?" Ike felt guilty, but he wanted to know more. His boss was an enigma, and his husband was so strange. "Yeah, wish I fucking didn't. They were awful, all lovey-dovey and shit. It gave me cavities. Tweak was even more of a spaz back then, always screaming about aliens and gnomes and shit. It was fucking weird. I don't even know how Craig handled it." Cartman informed him. Ike watched them as he continued to speak. "The spaz was probably the one to make Tucker wear the gay-ass tinfoil hat the other week. Probably thought aliens were coming back for our memories or some shit." And with that, Cartman left. Ike was perplexed. It didn't seem like Tweak was a masochist, and it didn't seem like Tucker was that much of an asshole. Ike's whole views of his boss were changing, and they continued to shift as Tucker and his husband both stood up before exiting the office, all the while holding hands. It was freaking weird to see Tucker that human. Ike didn't think he could feel this invested in his boss's life, but at least one puzzle was solved. Tucker may be a weirdo, body snatcher, robot, human asshole, but he's also in love, which is something Ike never thought the man could feel.